Well, I hope that you had fun and that you managed to connect with some of the other developers. We've had a couple of people that dropped by to Speakers Table and that talked to Anna. Thanks for that. We're going to start with our second talk, which is going to be a talk by Stefano Magni. And the talk is going to be called Front-End Testing on Steroids. That's it from me. Thank you.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. So, first of all, if I will forget, please remind me to send you the link at the end of the talk to have a free t-shirt like mine or about Cypress. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, the first screen. Okay, I think that you can see my screen, and please remember that probably you should get full screen my screen and hide my face, because I'm going to show you a lot of code in VS Code, so probably you need to enlarge the screen. So welcome to my front-end testing on steroids talk. I'm going to tell you my story, the story of a front-end developer that started using Cypress to improve the quality assurance of my front-end products, and ended up using Cypress as a development tool instead of a testing tool and nothing more. So, as I told you, my talk will be 100% code, and I'm going to don't worry about taking notes about the link of the slides and the repository, because I'm going to share them in the chat at the end of the talk. So I go to my this is the repository that I'm going to share with you with all the contents. And I prepared a super simple React application for this talk, and one component application that has a real backend. So at the moment, if you try to log in, my local backend is going to tell you that there are no the right credentials. So I'm going to jump to VS Code. Okay, this is my screen. Okay, with all the tests that I want to show you for this talk. And the first thing that I want to show you about Cypress. So Cypress is, what is Cypress? Cypress is a browser automation tool, or better, is a testing tool, because generic automation tools like Selenium or Puppeteer are really good while you need to automate your browser, but they are not so good for testing. And other tools like Cypress and Testcafe board just for UI testing, and has first-class support for a lot of things that you need to have for testing and to simplify your testing life. So in the repository, you're going to find these two tests with a lot of comments and a lot of explanations, but I'm going to use these for tests. This is the Cypress UI. When you launch Cypress, you could launch Cypress in an headless mode when you need to launch Cypress in the CI, and with the UI like this is the case. So, and when I launch the test, remember that Cypress works inside the browser. So if you want, you could choose to launch your test on Electron, a super simplified version of Chrome, or other browser that you have installed on your machine. So I'm going to use Electron because it's the fast one. Oh, sorry, I closed WhatsApp and even Slack. Sorry. Okay, so this is my first test. This is an end-to-end test, so I'm using Cypress to automate all the actions in my front-end application, the super simple authentication form. And I want to be sure that everything works fine. So what does it mean? What does it mean that it's an end-to-end test? An end-to-end test is a test where you have a working front end and a working backend with a real database. So if you take a look at the test. Before, this is the body of the test, where I specify all the actions that I want to perform in the page, like typing in the input in the username field, typing in the password field, clicking on the button. But since I'm going to test that everything works fine where I use a real user, I need to perform some actions on the server before running the test. So first of all, I wipe the data on my local backend, and I make a call to be sure that in the database these credentials exist. And then when everything works fine, when I'm sure that these credentials exist in the database, I'm going to set the viewport just to have the vertical viewport. And I'm going to visit the home page of my application. I'm going to retrieving some HTML elements from the page, in this case, the username input field, typing into it, the same for the password. Then I'm going to retrieve the button, clicking, and I want to be sure that the feedback to the user where he authenticates and the credentials exist is visible on the page. So on the left, you can find the Cypress test runner, and this is what makes Cypress really outstanding compared to the competitors, because when you automate a browser, you have to a lot of times you have to understand what's happening in the browser, because at the moment everything is easy because I know the tool, I know my front-end application, I know the test, so everything is fine. But when you write a test and when you have to know better the tool, you have to run a lot of times your test. A lot of times you can't understand what's happening in the browser, and you can't understand if the test is failing because your front-end application doesn't work, or if the reason is that you haven't understood correctly how the tool works. So the test runner shows you everything, a feedback about a log for every Cypress command, and allows you to understand, for example, that after clicking on the button, the front-end application has performed an AJAX request. So this is the the really first end-to-end test, and I want to show you some interesting features of Cypress. First of all, by default, everything in the browser is asynchronous, because if you take a look at what happens in the input fields, Cypress is going to type in an asynchronous way. Cypress is not going to set the value of the input field, but is going to write directly in the input field. And this is an asynchronous operation. But if you take a look at the command, this is not an async management, because for Cypress, everything is asynchronous by definition. So I'm going to visit the page, and when I visit the page, Cypress waits up to 60 seconds for the page to be loaded. Then I'm going to retrieve an element and typing into it. But what happens if the input field is not in the page? There is no problem, because when I try to retrieve an element from the page, Cypress is going to wait up to 4 seconds for the element to appear. Then I'm going to type, and as you saw in advance, this is an asynchronous operation. I'm going to do the same for the password. I'm going to retrieve the button and clicking on it, and then here there is the AJAX request, because the front-end application is going to perform the AJAX request. This is an asynchronous action by definition, but again, I'm not going to manage it, okay? Because I expect that the string is going to be shown after the AJAX request succeeds. So first of all, the asynchronous management of Cypress is one of the keys of Cypress, and trust me, it really simplifies your testing life. But why I told you about productivity? Oh, sorry. This is my cat. So why I told you about productivity? Because this is an end-to-end test. This is an end-to-end test. I'm sure that the front-end application and the back-end application work together, but while I'm developing my front-end application, I don't want to test that both the front-end and back-end applications work together, but I want just to be sure that my front-end application works. Then at the end, I'm going to integrate the application with the back-end one. So this test lasts for 7 seconds. This is a lot of time because I can't use this test while developing, because this is just one test, but my login form has a lot of different paths, not just the happy path. And my front-end application probably is going to have hundreds of tests, and they can't wait 7 seconds for every test. This is not feasible. Okay, so let me introduce the concept of UI integration tests. What are UI integration tests? Instead of using a real backend, I'm going to ask Cypress to act as a backend for my front-end application. So if you take a look at the code, as you can see, I'm not asking the backend to create this user, but simply I use the ci.server API that allows Cypress to intercept or completely stub all the requests. And then after visiting the page, I'm going to ask Cypress that, please, Cypress, every time that you see a post request that goes to this URL, please respond directly with this JSON. So if this is the JSON, this is obviously a fake JSON that returns from the backend, but I don't care about the content of the JSON in this case, because I just want that when the login form performs the request, someone has to respond with this fixture. So for the front-end application, this is completely transparent because the front-end app makes the request, and he's completely unaware of the fact that Cypress is responding to the agent's request. But since it's Cypress that is responding to the request, Cypress is almost immediately. So you can read yourself that the test is going to be really, really, really fast. 1 second, and 1 second compared to 7 seconds. Obviously, these are two different tests. I'm showing you the UI integration test that you can call even a front-end test, because I'm testing just the front-end without the backend. And there is the end-to-end test that tests something more. But for me, while I'm writing the code of a different application, this is enough. And if a test lasts just for 1 second, this is amazing for me, because I can run a lot of tests. In the previous company when I worked, since we have to replicate a real blockchain application with some low-cost AWS staging servers, on average, every UI integration test takes 2 seconds, while the end-to-end test takes 20 seconds. And using just end-to-end tests for testing your front-end application is not feasible at all. Another interesting feature of Cypress is that in this case, I want to, so please, I change the test code. So if the agent request takes too long, I want to show the user another string, a be patient feedback. So I try to mitigate the bad experience on my front-end application. And this string is shown after 1 second after the loading string. So as you can see, obviously, the standard test lasts for 1 second, and this test lasts for 2 seconds because the test is the same, but after I click on the button, I'm going to check that the loading string is shown, and the same for the be patient. But if I have something like this, I can ask Cypress to control the clock of the browser. So I take care of ticking myself the browser clock, and then after clicking on the button, I tick the browser clock by 1 second. So in this case, as you can see, the test lasts more or less the same of the previous one, even if this string is shown after a set timeout. And this is really nice because, again, always remember that you can't sacrifice quality for speed, but you must be sure that your test is as fast as possible, because the faster the test, the more you are going to using them. And if you have a feedback like this, for example, imagine when you are writing the test and you hit save. I'm hitting Command S on my Mac, and Cypress runs the test again and again. And this is really amazing and improves your productivity. And in this case, the only difference, I control the clock and I ask Cypress to delay the AJAX request by 20 seconds. So since Cypress is the backend is the server for my application at this moment, I can even delay the response. And another interesting thing is that imagine how could you test some unhappy path like the credentials wrong? Usually, if you don't use a testing tool like Cypress, you are going to put a lot of conditions in your source code. So probably you are going to add a return, a special return on the function that is in charge of performing the AJAX request. But since Cypress is the server, I can even ask Cypress to respond with another status. So in this case, I can even test this special case. And if you take a look at all the UI integration tests put together, you can see that all of them last for almost 5 seconds. And this is feasible. I can, if I'm changing the code of a different application, I could wait for 5 seconds altogether, because it's not, and I'm sure that everything works fine. And I want to show you 2 more features about Cypress that are really outstanding. First of all, as I told you, these are the steps and the commands that I executed in Cypress, but every step is interactive. So, for example, take a look here. Okay, you could see on the right that Cypress is showing me how the front-end application looks before the typing command and after. And if I click, I can pin it and moving between the 2 states. Okay, and if you do you remember that Cypress works inside the browser? So I can even use the standard development tools. So in this case, I'm debugging the front-end application at the moment. So if I go to the click button, for example, you could, this one could be better. Okay, if I inspect the HTML, you could see that I have to find my okay. So you could see that the input field has the value, but the password not. And so I'm really inspecting the DOM of the application at this precise moment. And in case that some assertions need to be expanded, you can go back to the console, okay, and you can check every command and trying to understand what's happening. And remember that since both the test and both the React application are working in the same browser, here you can see the logs from the React application and the logs from the test. So if there is something wrong, this really helps you understanding what's happening. But the last 2 secrets for improving your productivity is, first of all, since usually when you write a front-end application, you write the front-end code, the React code, then you test into the browser. You are going to to go back to the editor, save the file again, and trying if everything works, everything manually. And when you are sure that everything works properly, you're going to write a test and asking Cypress to reply to perform the same operations that you have performed manually, probably hundreds of times. But since Cypress is faster than you performing the same actions, please stop performing manual actions. And while I'm not telling you about using TDD, but please, when you are developing the input field, start by writing a command that allows you to interact with the input field. When you have prepared the password field, do the same again and again. So I really started using Cypress as my first development tool, and I completely stopped performing manual operations. Instead of performing manual operations and then writing the test, I write the test while I code, and then only in the end, I perform some manual actions, some manual checks that just to be sure that everything works properly. And there is just one missing point about using Cypress as your testing tool. I shown you that you could choose one of your local installed browser. And for example, I use Canary for Cypress, and Cypress has a Chrome user that's persisted. Okay, so if I launch my test inside Chrome, the real amazing thing is that you can see that directly from the Chrome extension website, I have installed the Redux and the React DevTools. So you have a browser, you have the Chrome DevTools, you have the React DevTools. So there you have everything you need to start using Cypress as your main development tool. Okay, trust me. And then I go back to the slides. Okay, now you can go back and watching both my face and the slides. And obviously, I told you about the most important things, the most important features of Cypress related to productivity, but there are a lot of things to tell more. For example, intercepting and managing and checking that the AJAX request have the correct payloads, and leveraging app actions to improve the test speed, because I shown you the login form, but imagine if you have to go to the checkout page, and so you have to perform a login, and then you can test the checkout page. But I don't want to fill out the username field and the password field for every test. So usually you write an app action that allows Cypress to interact with your page and performing actions like, for example, performing the direct AJAX request. So your front-end application perform the login phase in just a tenth of a second without waiting to fill the input fields. And please check out the tests that you find in my repository, because I can show you, just a second, I can show you the full code here. And okay, this is the code. So there are a lot more cases with a lot of comments for every single line of code. So if you're interested in deepening the topic, please check out the tests. And if you want to deepen the productivity part of Cypress, I really suggest you to watch this talk from Corey House, because he pushed more this topic of Cypress and productivity. And I like to quote a friend of mine, because more or less 1 year ago, I asked to Simone Davico, a friend of mine, to give me his developers for free for a day. And because I wanted to test my Cypress course. So I offered my Cypress course for free in change of his developers. And he told me that they had never written a test in their life, but now they are testing everything with Cypress because it's such an amazing tool. And in the slides, I prepared even a lot of resources. The first ones are some of my articles about Cypress, and not only mine, that are quite fast to be read. We can tell less than 15 minutes. Then the extended sources are really, really, really long articles that are amazing, but probably you don't have the time to read it now. And then some courses on again, and the testing JavaScript one of Kent, because it's amazing. And I haven't introduced myself. I'm Stefano Magni from Italy. I am a front-end engineer. I'm a Cypress ambassador because I love the product. So I really love to spread the product over the world. And I work remotely for Workwave at the moment. And you can check all my contributions on GitHub. And I'm even the author of some Cypress plugins. Cypress Wait Until is the most successful one because at the moment it's downloaded more or less 200,000 times a month. And if you want to deepen the topic of UI testing, please check out my UI testing best practices book on GitHub, because when I started deepening the topic of UI testing, I realized that there are a lot of good contents around the web, but there is not a central repository or a central blog for them, and usually they are related to different tools with different solutions. So when I started studying it, I found to be quite difficult to deepen the topic. So that's why I started this book that at the moment contains almost 20 best practices, and every best practice is a chapter, an article with a lot of details about it. And thank you. And as I promised you at the beginning of the talk, I'm going to share with you in the chat. So where is the chat? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where is the chat. I can't find the chat at this moment, probably because I'm presenting. Probably I need, oh, okay, this is the chat. Okay, perfect. So this is the chat, and I want to, okay, sorry, because I went back on the browser. So, okay, I sent you all the links in the chat. And you have the links to the slides, to the repository, about me, and you have the link. I'm going to paste the link for the free Cypress t-shirt. On the page, you have to leave feedback about this presentation, and Cypress is going to send you a t-shirt for free, like this one, directly at your home. And last but not least, the most frequently asked question about Cypress. Cypress is free and open source. You have to pay Cypress just if you want it to load the videos of your tests on their servers. But if you don't use this feature, Cypress is completely free and open source. And that's all from me.
All right, that's been awesome, Stefano. I think that we have one question that has not been answered. Does Cypress work well with the build systems?
Sorry, in the build system?
Does Cypress work well with the build systems?
Oh, yep. Because always remember that I have shown you Cypress has two main commands, Cypress run and Cypress open. I have shown you Cypress open because it's the command that opens the Cypress UI. But if you launch Cypress run, it performs all the tests without an interface. So don't worry, because obviously every time I have put my Cypress tests in the CI, and there are even a lot of recipes on the website where you can set your if in your CI you launch npm test, you are okay. But on the Cypress website, there are a lot of recipes that allows you to cache the Cypress dependency. So if you're going to run Cypress in Travis or SQL CI or in Jenkins, they are going to cache the Cypress package, so every build is going to perform better and better. And okay, there is another question. Can you also simulate request failures? Yep. As I shown you in the test, there was a case with the unhappy path where I simulate the 401 status code. So yes, you can perform. You can control the network and perform every kind. You can stub every kind of request, even the failure ones. And another question, you can store its value on a variable, you have to use then, but when you have many nested arrays, it gets difficult. We can, okay, so I am going to share my screen again for a moment, because since, okay, now you can see my screen. I want to go to VS Code. I'm going to, okay, this is a complete test. And since I told you that everything is asynchronous by default, I haven't shown you what happens when you have to do the
Sorry to
opposite.
interrupt. Can you just zoom in a bit more?
Oh, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So in this case, I'm going to use the then operator like a promise, because since this is an asynchronous task, usually I can't do something like const. Actually, I say equals to ci.wait. Okay, this is not possible because Cypress works this way. Cypress allows you to don't manage asynchronous operation, because Cypress run your test twice. The first one is just to create a queue of commands that Cypress has to perform. Then Cypress loads your front application and performs the queue of actions. And that's why you can't assign to a variable the result of a Cypress command. Then you are going to using the then operator. But yes, it's right that when you have some of them, probably you're going to do something like this and like this. Okay, so the callback hell could strike again, but don't worry too much about that, because in my experience, I wrote a lot of tests with different kind of applications, and I didn't go on with more than three deep layers. So don't worry about it. And there are a lot of tricks to avoid as much as you can the callback hell. So don't worry about that. As much as you gain experience with Cypress, you are going to flatten your test code.
All right, that's perfect. Thank you, Stefano.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you. For